Hello there and welcome to Inside Cottonwood, where we showcase how we inspire a vibrant community. I'm your host today, Hezekiah Allen, Interim Recreation Center Manager for the City of Cottonwood. And today we've got Mr. Tom Palmer with the Prescott National Forest. How are you doing?
Doing good today, Hez. Thank you for having me.
So Tom, your title is East Zone Recreation Program Manager.
Yes, sir.
So I got that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
yeah.
perfect.
That.
You know, we're talking trails today. When people think trails, they usually think beautiful vistas and exercise, outdoor activities. But in reality, trails started as a way of transportation. Before roads, before everything else, how do we get from point A to point B where there's this established path and everybody takes it? And so today we're talking trails, but we're talking trails in a way that showcase those outdoor activities and some programs and things that come up. For those of you that don't know, if you go to the State Parks Association or Arizona State Parks website, there's a great site on their location where it showcases some of the historic trails in the area. Two of them, for example, are the General Crook Road that was created by General Crook to connect Fort Apache to Fort Whipple. Or there's the Old Spanish National Historic Trail, known as the longest and crookedest trail in the history of America. It started in Santa Fe and ended in Los Angeles, 1829 to 1848. And just imagine a time you're on horseback going from Santa Fe to Los Angeles on the trail they're calling the crookedest trail in America. I don't know about you, but sometimes I can't even follow the GPS or MapQuest on my phone, let alone horseback following the crookedest trail in America. So let's talk a little trails, Tom. Let's dive into this. So why are trails so important to the Prescott National Forest?
I think trails are important for quite a few reasons. One being recreation these days. As you mentioned in the past, they were just a means of getting from A to B.
Yeah.
These days, it's a means of just getting out and enjoying your public lands. Exercise, lots of different recreational user groups out there using trails, different types of trails, for lots of different reasons. So I think it's a way for people to get out, leave life behind for a little bit, maybe enjoy some solitude, and enjoy just the outdoors. And trails get you into the heart of public lands,
right,
whether you're on Forest Service or wherever it is, BLM, wherever it is. So it gets you out in the middle of your heritage.
There you go.
Yeah.
You know, that's such a great point. Being from the Midwest, like you don't go out on trails. You go to a little city park or a state park, and they may have a little system that interconnects, and then you're out the door. I was so amazed when I first came out here and I got into mountain biking, which was a painful experience to begin with. I don't know if anybody's tried that, but it's painful to get into that, both physically and also the lungs.
Sure.
But I was amazed on the seamless connections between state property and the federal property and how these trails interconnect and the relationship between all the groups. Can you explain to our viewers what it takes to make sure all those connections happen and that seamless process takes place?
It really takes relationships and collaboration, working together.
Yeah.
Everybody having a common goal, having a common purpose. Without that, you don't get that. So yeah, we're pretty fortunate in the Verde Valley, particularly on the Prescott Forest, to have those relationships with the user groups and the communities, and the other agencies to make that possible.
No, that's such a good point. I mean, just at this table, you've got the federal, and then you've got the city of Cottonwood, and we're sitting here having a conversation. You know, Cottonwood is a town of 11,990 people, and you're the Prescott National Forest, and we work together seamlessly. There's a group called the Verde Front.
Yes.
Can you explain to our viewers what that is and why it's so important?
I'll do my best on the Verde Front. The Verde Front is essentially just a collaborative of interested stakeholders, municipalities, agencies that came together about 10 years ago, 2008, 2009, kind of formed to come together to talk about issues and talk about needs and talk really about the communities and opportunities there and sustainability of the natural resources of the Verde River, particularly in the Verde. If we're talking about the Verde Valley, the river was a big catalyst for that.
Okay.
But really protection of the environment and opportunities for the residents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the people that are sitting around that table, it was mind-boggling to think that we got all these folks at the same time at the same table. Because there's Prescott National Forest, there's Coconino National Forest, there's Tuzagoot and their group. if I'm not mistaken.
And National Park Service.
National Park Service.
Arizona State Parks.
State Parks.
Yavapai Apache Nation.
All the cities and towns in the area.
Yep.
All coming around, and that collaboration leads to the seamless process. Nothing's ever seamless. I don't want to give that false hope there. But that interconnectivity of the different organizations working together to make sure that the end user has a system that is safe, fun, and exploratory, that they can get out there and really just see what this countryside has to offer.
I would agree.
I put you on the spot here a little bit, Tom. What's your favorite trail system in the area?
You know, to be quite honest with you, Mingus has probably the most robust trail system that we have on the district right now, aside from our two wilderness areas, Cedar Bench and Pine Mountain Wilderness, on the Verde district. And that's primary reason for some of the work that we've been doing lately. I like the Black Canyon Trail, 114, which is right out of Cottonwood, that off of Ogden Ranch Road, and up to Mingus, and I love the wilderness trails, personally. But we're doing some things now with the community, have been for the last couple of years now, and it's a really exciting time, and we've got some things coming up that I think are going to be really fun for the communities. Yeah. So
we were talking the other day. I called you because you're going to come to the Trails Committee meeting, and I'm on the phone with you, and you told me, well, I'm up on the side of the mountain, and I'm laying out some trails, and I could just tell you were in your happy place. Out in the wilderness, and that's what you enjoy. You know,
I started in trails in my career 22 years ago.
Did you?
That was my first job with the outfit and with the Forest Service. And I hated to miss that meeting, Hez, but we were up on the Blowout Wash system, actually.
I was a little jealous myself.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with you there. Doing some last surveying, some archaeological surveying for some of the final trails at Blowout. So yeah.
So back up again. You said you started out in trails.
Yep.
I think for our viewers, there's a lot of folks out there that there's this mystique when it comes to the National Forest.
Sure.
Where how do I get in? What do I do? That's something I would love to do because I enjoy the outdoors. How does somebody get to where you're at?
Perseverance and time. Yeah. I started out in trails on just a temporary job after completing a degree in forestry. Now that isn't always the route that people take. There's other ways to get into the agency, the Forest Service. I actually got my permanent appointment in fire.
Really?
So I started back in 20 years ago. It was a little different time. We'd just gotten some money and incentives from the region on fuels initiatives, and there was just a hiring. When I got out of school, they said, "Wait 10. You're going to be waiting 10 years before you get a job." And
I bet that was like a gut check. Like,
it's kind of hurt a little bit with student loans, and but a couple of years of seasonal work, and I was just fortunate to be on a district where they needed somebody like me, and so anyways, that started my career in the Forest Service, and have done several things throughout that time period, through 22 years, and ended up here about 10 years ago. In the current job. So you
went trails part-time.
Yep.
Put your time in there, and then you found an opening in the fire side.
Yep, for about 5 or 6 years.
5 or 6 years, and that was all on the east side of the state?
On the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest, out of the Clifton district.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then so with this, so you travel around to different parks, Prescott National Forest.
National Forest. Yep.
How long do you stay at one national forest? Is there a determined time?
You know, I spent 14 years in Clifton on the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest. Some people spend less time. Some people are there for a year or two. I enjoyed my time there. I was learning. I was being productive, so I stayed.
Okay.
These days, it seems people move more often. And that's just some of that's personal reasons, family, whatever it may be. But there's no prescribed number of years you're required to stay at a post.
So it's not like the military where you're like, you have 4 years here, then look for that.
No. So there's lots of opportunities. There's tons of opportunities if you're willing to travel. And move around. You can see the country. You can see the world.
Wow.
International forestry. You can be all parts of the United States. So it's really up to you and what your limits are.
So you spend a couple years at a certain location, and then you're like, I got an itch.
Yep.
You get on and start looking for the openings in the National Forest and put your name in the hat, and then do the interview process, I'd imagine, and then they either pick you or don't pick you?
They do, and there's a lot of, that's kind of how it works. You look for the jobs where you want to go, and if you're lucky or if you're persistent, you end up where you want to be.
Fantastic.
So yeah.
Well, Tom, we're going to take a short break here, and then when we come back, we're going to be talking the blowout wash system and the process it took to get to that point, and the work that's being done up here. And so hang in there with us, and we'll be back here shortly.
Sounds good.
Attention Cottonwood residents. If you've been a Cottonwood resident for a year or more and are at least 18 years old, you could run for the Cottonwood City Council. The Cottonwood City Council makes policy decisions and is empowered to enact ordinances and policies to protect citizens' rights in the city of Cottonwood. In the 2020 election cycle, the citizens of Cottonwood will elect a mayor and 4 council members. If you want to be a part of the Cottonwood City Council, now is the time to contact the Cottonwood City Clerk's office for more information. Qualified electors can run for mayor or council seats, and all forms and petitions are due by April 6, 2020. Contact the Cottonwood City Clerk today at 928-340-2727. The City of Cottonwood, inspiring a vibrant community.
Welcome back to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host, Hezekiah Allen with the City of Cottonwood, Interim Recreation Center Manager, and with me is Tom Palmer with the Prescott National Forest. We were just talking a little history, some trails, setting it up to talk about blowout wash and the work that the Prescott National Forest is doing, the connections the city is making in the area. But I had a couple of quick questions for you, Tom.
Sure.
For our viewers, I know when I got to the area and you're on 89 going to Sedona and you see the sign, "Welcome to Prescott National Forest." My first thought was, we're not in Prescott.
Right.
Can you explain to our viewers why and what's going on there?
I think it's just, it's like counties, and it's just area. Years and years ago, boundaries were made about jurisdiction. Coconino, as you know, we share a boundary with the Coconino National Forest, which is the Verde River, which many people may not know, or they do know. And I really don't have a good answer, but it's just when they were dividing up the national forest, they used boundaries and landmarks, much why you see probably the Verde River as a north and east boundary to the Prescott National Forest.
And so then each like Prescott National Forest, Coconino National Forest, there's kind of like districts.
There are generally districts within each national forest. And depending on how large the national forest, those can be broken into 3 to 5, depending on how many districts they need based on the land base. You know, the district, the Verde or the Prescott National Forest is about 1.2 million acres. Of which the Verde district is about 300,000. So the Bradshaw and the Chino districts on the Prescott side make up the other 2 districts of the Prescott National Forest.
So then I imagine you guys all get together, and gals, for meetings, district or Prescott National Forest meetings, the different districts.
We sure do.
And then the Prescott National Forest goes after funding from the feds, and so does the Coconino, and you guys are all kind of going after supplies and resources and things like that.
We get an appropriated budget from Congress every year for maintaining daily operations. And although it seems like budgets keep going down, we continue to do more, and we try to. But the Prescott National Forest is a very cohesive forest. We work very well across those district boundaries. We meet regularly in our recreation group very regularly, and we to work out budget, work out problems, work out issues. So the Prescott Forest is a fantastic example of people of a complete forest working very well together, in my opinion.
And makes a whole world difference.
Oh, it does.
Especially when you're traveling. I mean, everybody in this area travels to the Prescott side and travels to those other districts, and it's pretty seamless.
It's about relationships, just like the community collaboration. So without those relationships, work doesn't get done.
No, and you hit the nail on the head, because budgets are always shrinking, or budgets are always challenged, and there's never been a situation where they're like, we've got all this money to spend. Can you figure out a reason, a way, how we can spend it?
Sure.
Usually the opposite. But passion and purpose and people loving what they do, and those relationships is what I think makes it, everything happen, and just echoing what you're saying there. Another question just for our viewers is, so these trails have numbers on them, like Trail 114 you mentioned earlier in our show. What does that mean?
The numbers are just a convention that our trails and wilderness managers put together. Some of them long before that individual maybe took that position.
Mm-hmm.
They're just a way to identify and mark our trails and make them visible and make them part of our legal system.
Oh, nice.
So a number on a trail essentially means it's part of our legal trail system.
Okay.
Much as our roads are.
Mm-hmm.
So if that makes sense. It's just a way to identify them so they're easily identifiable to the public.
Okay.
Yep.
Makes total sense. So there's not like 114, there's not a 113 next to it, or a 112.
Well, there could be.
Could be.
There could be. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes they're grouped together. Sometimes you'll see a road that is, say 361, and then you'll see a 361A.
Okay.
Sometimes those numbers are grouped together just to make it easy for the public to understand and know where they are.
So that system makes sense.
Exactly.
Now, the Forest Service roads, from my understanding, those were originally built to help fight forest fires, to get folks in and around the forest.
The roads on the Prescott and other forests probably have a long history in mining, ranching, some fire suppression likely. Yeah, there's probably lots of reasons in history why roads have been created.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about Blowout Wash. It's a system that you guys have been working on for a long time. Sure. I don't know if the public understands that it's a trail, and in our head, logically you think it should be very simplistic, just to go out there and put this trail in, grab some shovels, and let's get it done. But there's a lot of work that goes into building these trails. Tell us a little bit about that.
You bet. And I won't take away from the hard work that it takes to actually construct the trails, because we have a great cadre of volunteers here in the Verde Valley. We have for the last couple of years actually working on trails and maintaining and actually constructing. Mm-hmm. That is probably the hardest work, but it's also the most fulfilling.
Yeah.
If I can step back a little bit in terms of the planning, it does take a lot of planning, a lot of coordination to take a trail from a concept or an idea to actually putting it on the ground. If I can go back a little bit in history, 10 years ago we had some community meetings here in Cottonwood and Camp Verde in the Verde Valley, in Prescott, Black Canyon City areas, to really sit down with the public and had some focus groups to talk about what's missing on National Forest System lands, what the communities see is missing, and what they would like us to start working on or start to move forward on. And out of that, there were several items out of those focus groups, but one of the primary ones was trails and access.
Yeah.
Particularly on the Verde district.
Nice.
Went back, we have trails in the wilderness areas and up on Mingus, but the Verde Valley is kind of short on trails for the most part, close to get to. And so I think the community saw that as a need. And out of those focus groups, we got several proposals from the community and partners, municipalities, to work on things like Blowout Wash.
Nice.
Blowout Wash is one of the first major projects proposals that we got from the city of Cottonwood, and so we've been working very diligently over the last I say 8 years, 10 years now to make that happen. So, to say the least.
I'm smiling, Tom, because thank you for the shout out.
Oh, well, sure. Well, again, it's about relationships. It's about if City of Cottonwood wasn't at that table 10 years ago, if they chose not to participate,
right,
things may be different now. And that goes to say for all the other stakeholders that showed up to those meetings and voiced their opinions, the public that came to tell us what they needed. And that set us off on a path to developing what ended up being a fairly comprehensive trail plan, the Verde Trails and Access Plan that was actually signed in 2018, September or August of 18. And that trail plan authorized 132 miles of mostly non-motorized trails on the Verde District, just on the Verde District. About 20 of those occurs out at Blowout Wash.
Wow.
And the connections to Mingus and the Black Canyon Trail 114 and Ogden Ranch.
And the college.
And the college, exactly. Out of that proposal and out of that decision for those trails, for those projects to move forward, we developed some partnerships with the Yavapai College. We are in a partnership with them now, and they've through an all hands approach and providing opportunities for the public, they are hosting a formal trailhead
Wow.
on the college property, which is directly connected to the Blowout Wash system, which has enabled us to help them improve some of their existing trail system and the connections of the forest. And the Blowout Wash system is right next door. It's a neighbor to Mesquite Hills, Cottonwood Ranch, and the college, and other properties in the area. And so those connections will provide also to Del Monte Wash Trail, which is something that a trail that the City of Cottonwood's been working on, as you well know, for quite a few years. And so in that planning, in that process, in that collaboration, we ensured during our planning process that the connections were made, trails were aligned correctly so that those connections could be made to the city.
Nice.
If that makes sense.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, we're going to take another short break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk some more about Blowout Wash, talk about the connection points, and then give you some safety tips so when you're out there on the trail system, you're safe and you're aware. We'll be right back inside Cottonwood. Thank you.
This is Bruce Morrow, Transportation Manager for Cottonwood Area Transit. Remember, we cover the entire Verde Valley and Sedona. Cottonwood Area Transit has you covered wherever you want to ride in the Verde Valley, all day, every day. Take Cottonwood Area Transit through Clarkdale, Verde Village, and from 26 locations in Cottonwood. With Verde Links, it's a quick and easy trip to Sedona every day. Don't forget our connectors to Camp Verde. Visit cottonwoodaz.gov for Cottonwood Area Transit and take a seat. Let's go ride.
There are people who struggle with addiction and homelessness. Sometimes it may feel like there is nothing we can do to help.
But there is. You can make a tax-deductible donation and help those in need transition away from homelessness.
When you give someone a handout, you could actually be supporting an addiction.
A better life starts with better health, especially for those living in the streets.
Support solutions, not addictions. You can make a difference. Visit cottonwoodcares.org.
Welcome back to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host, Interim Recreation Center Manager for the City of Cottonwood, and with me we've got Mr. Tom Palmer with the Prescott National Forest. We're talking trails, we're talking Blowout Wash system, we're talking community connections, and you know, Tom, one of the things that you'd mentioned and we've talked about is it takes a group of people, it takes volunteers to make things happen. If I'm a volunteer and I want to get involved, how do I do that? And I think on your screen here shortly, some information will pop up. But can you explain to our viewers how they can get involved?
You bet. You can call. That's a great question, and it's something that we're desperately wanting more participation, particularly here in the Verde Valley. You can call any one of our Forest Service offices. You can ask for me at the Verde office for sure. You can get a hold of me. We have a coordinator on the Prescott side who is actually Michael Reveal.
Okay.
He works in the Trails and Wilderness shop along with Jason Williams, and he has been leading the volunteer efforts here every Wednesday.
Nice.
For the last year or so. And so I think the flyer will show his information, but if you miss that, please give me a call at the Verde Ranger District, and I can get you point in the right direction.
So pretty much every Wednesday?
Every Wednesday right now, yep.
Call the Camp Verde office at the Verde Ranger District, and then you can get involved, and I'd love to have you.
That'd be great. We had a great turnout on February 8th at Blowout Wash.
You said 21.
About 21 people.
Yeah.
Yep. So we appreciate those volunteers coming out and helping us. So.
And I love how you stated, and I didn't mean to diminish the work, but I think from the perspective of the public, sometimes they feel like it should go from concept to a hard trail right like that. But the work that those volunteers do and being able to see the trail at the end of the day that they put in that is going to be there for a long time has got to be rewarding.
I think it is, and that's most of what this plan is based on, community support. If we don't have support for trails, particularly from volunteers to help maintain them, help construct them, not necessarily construct them, but maintain them and take care of them, use them. If we don't have, that's a critical component. And if we don't have that, then there's really no point. We're not building trails for us.
Right.
We're building trails for the people. So we need that group of people out there showing support for those trails and advocating for them.
Yeah.
So,
You know, on that note, the city of Cottonwood, the city City Council for Cottonwood, senior leadership, has made it a vision, a mission to develop outdoor activities, develop trail systems, really focus on the river and connection points with the river. We live in an area, the Verde Valley, that is absolutely gorgeous. People move here because they want to be outside. They want to be able to go from their house and jump on a trail and go to either a city park or a state park or the Prescott National Forest. There's very few places in the world you can probably do that, and we feel very lucky to be in this area. And Cottonwood, with it being a tourism hub, with it being with that quality of life being so important, we want to keep creating and developing partnerships and investing into those partnerships from the city's perspective. And then also we're developing trail systems within the city to connect to those certain points to where you can go from your house or your apartment or your tiny home or whatever it is to a trail system and pretty much go over wherever you need to be, whether it be down to the grocery store or the national forest, which is a pretty unique thing where you sit on the Trails Committee with us and we're working on a riverfront park system. So if you don't know, the city's been working on Riverfront Park to create a kind of a loop trail around the park. It's about 96 acres, and then some interconnectivity areas with those parks. We did a Trails Master Plan 2016-17, understanding those future connection points with the Prescott National Forest, which if you've never been on Monte Wash in that area, Morgan Scott and the city and our department has been working with Prescott National Forest to develop Monte Wash to make that connection with Blowout Wash. Two different washes, but they intercede, so just make sure everybody's on the same page there. And what that'll do is Prescott National Forest, and you mentioned the college, you mentioned Mesquite Hills, Del Webb, and all those subdivisions and those community, the housing areas that connect to those washes that will take you all the way down to Old Town. I've had the opportunity to walk it a couple of times. I'm sure you have as well. You don't feel like you're in Cottonwood when you're in the Del Monte Wash or the Blowout Wash area because there's giant tree canopies, there's water running in the area certain times of the year. It's pretty amazing. Wouldn't you say, Tom? I
would say so. Yeah, it's a very we live in a very unique environment here in the Verde Valley.
Yeah.
I'm proud to be living here and working with everybody. But the environment we have around us, just in the foothills, you don't have to go too far to get a good view. And the work at the Riverfront Park, Del Monte Wash, connections that we'll be making in Camp Verde and the White Hills and Grief Hill and all those areas. The views are going to be spectacular. When I was up the other day for the meeting, looking down, I was looking at the peaks and at the San Francisco peaks, and looking at the Red Rocks of Sedona, and then I was looking down on Cottonwood and Clarkdale and the valley, and it's just pretty amazing.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so we live in a pretty amazing place. And
and it takes, I know just in our organization we've got Robert Winnicke with Public Works and Jack Teal, Parks Recreation Superintendent, and Morgan Scott, and it's a team effort to get this stuff done, and I'm sure it's the same way on your side and every other organization making it a focal point. Riverfront Park, Del Monte Wash, Prescott National Forest, those are just a few of the trails projects conceptually that are being discussed. So those are the ones that are actually being the boots on the ground, and those are happening right now. But in the background, there's all this planning effort through Verde Front and the Trails Committee and the different organizations on how to make these connections. This is what we're doing for our trail system. So, I can only imagine in 5-10 years from now what this system's going to look like. It's going to be impressive.
I think you're correct. I think it's going to be a place people want to come. The residents are probably going to enjoy all those opportunities.
Totally.
And our main mission from the forest perspective is to be relevant to our communities and be important to them and do things that are important to our communities. So we hope that we're on that trajectory now, or we think we are, and we wait to hear from the public to tell us how to change course if we need to.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's amazing this day and age what actually getting around the table and having a one-on-one conversation or a group of people get together and just chat and talk about trails and things we're passionate about. Well, Tom, one of the things we've talked about and you've brought up a couple of times is that people have to get out and use this network. They have to get out and use the system. And there are so many great things to see in this area, like the vistas you were just describing. Can you give our viewers some safety tips?
Safety can be a little different for every person. Some folks, like I said, like the solitude, and a lot of folks may hike alone. Some good things to remember are if you're going somewhere, let someone know where you're going. Take plenty of water. Make sure that you're aware of your physical abilities. Do some research before you go.
Yeah.
In our area in the Verde Valley, cell phones are generally pretty good, but you never want to rely on that.
Right.
So you always want to be planning, one step ahead of that, and particularly if you're hiking in the backcountry, where those cell phones might not work too well.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things you can do to take precautions. There's lots of devices out there that can help you electronic that work off of satellites. I could mention all those, but really it's letting somebody know where you're going.
Yeah.
Give them the route that you're going. Give them a map. Do the work for yourself, because you're important, and your safety is important in getting you back home to your family. So take the time. Just don't get in your rig and decide to go hike Cedar Bench, or someplace like that, and not tell anybody. So just and be conscious of the environment. We live in Arizona. Weather changes on a dime. Critters start coming out when it gets warm, so be careful of snakes and other things. But just be conscious of your environment and plan ahead.
Yes.
That's probably your biggest tool, biggest thing you can do.
One of the things I thought was interesting and learning is that there's some great trails apps out there. And so in my mind, I was like, well, if I can't have cell phone service, how's this trail app going to work?
Right.
But there are trail apps out there that work off the grid and off the system.
Yes.
I can't name them off the top of my head, but if you're out there doing some research, make sure to research trails apps that don't need necessarily a connection to the internet to work properly. That way you've got a map system or something where you go out, because like Tom's saying, the backcountry is the backcountry, and it is wide open out there. So Tom, I just want to thank you for coming on with us today and explaining the system, explaining what's going on, the great work you guys are doing. That community makes everything happen, relationships. From the City of Cottonwood perspective, we thank you and thank the Prescott National Forest. And that's our show for today, Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host, Hezekiah Allen, Interim Recreation Center Manager for the City of Cottonwood. Join us next time.
Thank you.